This morning, we're going to talk about pivots, both professional and personal turning points, with someone whose job description, he's so comfortable with change that his job description is like a moving target. Troy Carter is a music manager. For 7 years, as Scott mentioned, he was Lady Gaga's manager. He's the CEO, founder, and chairman of Atom Factory, which also manages John Mayer, John Legend, and other artists. But within Atom Factory, he runs a venture capital firm, he runs a branding firm, and a production company. He's invested in more than 75 startups, including Uber, Dropbox, Spotify, and others. So this is clearly someone who is navigating his own path. And you can see why he has appeared in our Fast Company's Generation Flux coverage. He really kind of embodies that idea of constant reinvention and change. But even Troy gets blindsided at times. In other words, he's just like us. We have all experienced some sort of professional setback, in our careers, whether it's a job or a startup or a project that didn't work out, and we had to deal with that. We're going to look at today really using those moments to reframe your career, to really become stronger for it. And so for Troy, that moment, let's start right there. That moment for you was a year ago when you were fired by Lady Gaga, and this was your biggest client, your most high-profile client. Take us to that, really to that moment of how did you find out, and how did you process that psychologically and professionally?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, guys, and getting up this early in the morning.
It's a party crowd right here.
For me, it's been 11 months now. So that happened in November of last year. Of course, it was a pretty dramatic event, to say the least, because unfortunately it was one of those that wasn't quiet, and it kind of played out in the press a bit. And but it was I got the notice by email, but definitely a gut punch.
Right.
Yeah.
So immediately what mode you go into, because you're thinking of, okay, I got to protect my business. I got to kind of absorb the loss of a relationship. I mean, this is the music industry. You become close with with your artists. What were some of the immediate steps you took to recover both yourself and your company?
It's those are the moments where for me personally, it's about I go into personal reflection mode. So where for me I had to figure out things internally first. And kind of process, everything from the emotions, from, how does this affect the business, my reputation, my, personal relationship that I have with her, so it was a lot of factors in place. But, after, a few weeks, it was, okay, you know what, I'm responsible for a lot of people within the company. Whether it's young executives within the company, it's people with kids who work for me, also my own family and everything else or whatever. So that happened in November. So there was no Christmas vacation for me that last year.
Okay, right.
So I had to work through it.
What was the was there a moment, kind of a sign that, okay, we're going to get through this, where you felt like, all right, this isn't going to be the cloud that follows me around. We can move on from this. I can pivot.
Now, what I had, I was fortunate enough to have, people in my life, because, that's one of the things you think about, is, how's this going to affect my relationships with people? Because, when you manage somebody, as big as, Gaga is, it's you got a lot of high-level relationships, and how many of those relationships are real? How many were built around, that specific client and that relationship? and how much rebuilding will there have to be there. So those are all things you really factor in. And fortunately, that had been years of nurturing real relationships and real friendships with people, and I got a lot of fantastic phone calls and a lot of support that gave me the confidence, just, what, okay, things are going to be all right, so the phone was ringing, and people took my phone calls, so
Right.
helped me
That's
get through
huge,
it.
right? It makes you feel like, all right, it wasn't just transactional before.
Exactly.
It was actually a relationship.
And that's a
built over time.
big confidence booster.
Right. One thing I was thinking is that resilience is really a skill, and it's something you can hone and you can develop and really get better at over
Yeah.
time. I was thinking back to your background, growing up in Philadelphia, and you've said of your childhood, we didn't have a lot, and when you don't have a lot, you kind of grow up with this paranoia that whatever success you has could be gone at any moment.
Yeah.
Which then you're really prepared for. You're prepared for the potholes. Talk a little bit about your background and really how that did shape you to handle these sorts of unexpected turns, in a career.
Well, growing up, we grew up. I give the example of the movie. I think it was called Life is Beautiful, and it was the dad. The dad was raising his kid during the Holocaust or whatever, and and no, not to compare my life to that at all, but just the way a parent can protect a kid from knowing how bad the circumstances are.
Right.
And I think my mom did an incredible job of protecting us as much as possible from knowing how bad our circumstances were at times. When we had to choose between whether the lights were going to be on, whether we're going to have heat. Sometimes we didn't have hot water. We went. We moved around a lot or whatever. But I've always felt like I had a really good childhood in terms of family and moral values and all of the things that later in life I found out was really important. But I think the most important trait that I was able to take from her was that she got up 5:30 a.m. every single morning for 30 years, to go to work at Children's Hospital. And then with my grandmother, you weren't allowed to sleep in. So you used to have to pretend that you were up looking for a job or that, you were up doing something, because when you heard those feet coming down the steps, you had to do something. So I developed, just a really strong work ethic, and then also just I learned how to fight through things at a very early age.
What are you thinking of when you say that?
You know what? It's just I just never. I think the best lesson I've learned was the higher you rise, the lower you bow. So where you don't get caught up in your own shit. Both ways though. So you're not defined by your lows, you're not defined by your highs. And I think, for me it was about finding that place in the middle. And by doing that, it's, I've been able to at least create as much of a balanced life for myself as possible.
And doing that in an industry that is almost made for the highs, because there's a lot of hype around the industry.
It's all
so
hype.
It's like it seems so hard to kind of resist that impulse.
Yeah, and it's all hype, and it's just kind of really knowing where you fit in, and and for me, I think over the probably, I'm 41 now. I think I would say about 9 to 10 years ago, I think I finally found myself, and to the point where I'm comfortable understanding that it's not about me, and that this life that I've been given is a much bigger mission than me signing pop stars.
Right. It strikes me that you entered into a business that is kind of fraught with these sort of intense relationships with artists that can also just fall apart. And that you experienced this before. So in your 20s, you managed the rapper Eve in Philadelphia, and she left, and so you had to go through this, and that left you on the brink of bankruptcy. That was a big deal. And I'm curious how that affected the way you thought of kind of preparing yourself to maybe not be that exposed again.
Yeah.
How did that experience change how you were thinking of managing these relationships and really managing a company that you want to sustain.
Yeah, it's I think for me it was about learning. And Eve and I worked together for about 8 years, and I talked to her a few weeks ago, and still love her to death, still good friends, and but at that point in her career, she decided that she needed something different, and by the way, the whole world crashed around 2007, 2008 or whatever. And so I wasn't prepared from a business perspective or a life perspective. So, so when I was fortunate enough to, restart the business and start all over, I learned about diversification, that, you can't put all of your eggs in one basket, and that if you're going to be running a business, you got to run it like a business, and you can't be 100% reliant on, one particular area of your business, whether it's a client or a customer or, or however your business works. You gotta, it has to be spread out enough so where, one event can't be catastrophic for your company or your life.
Right. So for you, that diversification really took you into the tech space. Mm-hmm. What drew you there in the first place? What made you want to go in and really expose yourself to learn a lot about what was happening there and to start investing?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was timing. A lot of it also was just meeting these incredible entrepreneurs with these, really big ideas. And working in the music industry has been a very sleepy industry for the last, however many years. You want to talk about slow to change, litigious and, and everything else or whatever. And so just my curiosity kind of led me to the space. And just meeting, some incredible entrepreneurs who I felt like were going to shake up the world, I chose to start, investing.
Mm-hmm. And what strikes me about that pivot into the tech world was that you seem comfortable being out of your comfort zone, and I'm curious how you handle that, because for a lot of people, it's like they don't want to go beyond their expertise. Mm-hmm. You wade into the tech world, especially coming from the music world. I'm sure there are all sorts of stereotypes in terms of just what you know and don't know. You don't know how to code. Does that put you at a disadvantage? I mean, I'm really curious how you overcame some of those initially.
No, I just, one thing that I gotta say in that, I just do the work. Everybody, what's the secret to this, and do the work, and that was one of those situations where, I think people can't, it definitely was stereotypes around me, coming from the music industry, and and for a year, I just spent the time up north, meeting with a bunch of entrepreneurs, learning from those guys. I would host people in LA, and learned the culture, respected the culture. And when they show up to my office, I do the work.
Right.
When we invest in companies, these aren't passive investments. We're dealing with everything from public utility commissions. I'm on the phone with politicians and senators. We really do the work.
Okay, what do you mean by do the work? Like, I have my version of that, which is always like report the story.
Yeah.
What's your definition of do the work?
So it depends on the field. Specifically, as an investor, when young entrepreneurs they allow you to participate in their rounds and become part of these companies, they want to be able to activate your network and your knowledge base. So for me, whether it's helping them solve very hard problems, whether it's connecting them to relationships that we feel like could help help them with their companies, or it's and by the way, some stuff is easy, but a lot of stuff it's real work. But they just want you to show up, and it's the same thing when you work for artists. Artists want you to show up. And and that's all it usually boils down to. Are you going to add value to their career? Can you add strategy? Can you bring the relationships that into play? So all of those things are important. And a lot of people think it's about flash. A lot of people think it's about hanging backstage or getting your name in a TechCrunch article and all of the superficial things.
Or Fast Company articles. Those exist too.
But it's about doing the work.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what is as you learn more about the tech world, how did you develop your criteria for investing? What do you look for?
You know, I don't have any sort of thesis whatsoever. You know, and it's all, and as simple as it sounds, it's about great entrepreneurs. You know, so the same thing that we look for in great artists is the same thing that we look for, you know, with great entrepreneurs.
I was wondering if there's a parallel between the two.
It's definitely a parallel. It's that thing that I get in my stomach when I hear it, when I see it, you can smell it. Is that, you know, a lot of intuition goes into it, but at the same time with investing, you know, there's a certain level of discipline that has to go into it as well. You know, we don't lead rounds or anything like that. I mostly co-invest with, you know, very credible VC firms or, you know, or angel investors that, you know, have a track record that we've invested in before. So they do their level of due diligence, then we do our secondary layer of due diligence, and then that gut meets the ring. So we pass on a lot of those deals that come from, you know, from firms or whatever, that we don't feel that thing in our gut. And you know, that's as simple as that.
Tell me a couple of examples of when you felt something in your gut, but it was early. It was proven, but not a huge success yet.
It's been quite a few. Uber was, you know, was one of those companies where, you know, it was just in San Francisco at the time, and Shervin Pishavar, who was at Menlo at the time, had called me and said, you know, I want you to talk to, you know, the CEO. You know, you're gonna love him. And I'm on a car, you know, driving down Santa Monica Boulevard in LA, and I'm on the phone, and I did not understand the concept at first, you know, because it wasn't in LA at the time, and for some reason I thought that, you know, this guy was going to try to go out and buy a bunch of black cars or whatever, and I'm like, there's no possible way this thing's going to work.
So it's a fleet of SUVs. Okay, let me try to get my brain around it.
But, you know, after, you know, literally after probably 3 minutes on the phone with Travis, you knew this guy could do anything. You know, and it's the same thing talking to Daniel Ek from Spotify, you know, before they had the global licenses for music, you know, and this guy was, you know, building this company or whatever. It's, you know, he had the patience of Job, he had the personality, he had the love for music, he had all of those things or whatever. So, you know, it's recognizing those traits in an entrepreneur and saying, you know what, even if this doesn't work, something's going to work with, you know, so.
I'm curious, do you see the problem that the company's solving right away? Or does it come from, like, do you relate to the problem they're solving? Like with Uber, you heard it and was like, oh yeah, I've totally been in a situation where you can't get a cab, so yeah, this really makes sense.
A lot, some of them I can definitely relate to just because it's a service that I either would use or, you know, or we think is a great idea or that it's a market for it, so yeah.
So when you got you know, involved with these investments, did you see yourself as an active investor? Like going into this, did you know that you were going to use you know, your network from the music industry, and some of those ideas would come together? That convergence, I think, is really interesting.
And by the way, I had no idea what being a VC was. You know, so all I knew is I was going to put. No, I had no idea what the job criteria was. You know, so it was. Okay, do you want to invest? Sure, I want to invest. By the way, investing in some of these companies, I wasn't even expecting, you know, returns or anything like that. It just was, it was interesting, and a lot of the job I learned as I went along. But, you know, I didn't know it was about activating a network or anything like that. You know, but once we looked into it and we started sitting down with these, you know, guys, and it's like, hold on. We got this relation. Hey, I can call, you know, the mayor here, or I could call the chairman here, and I could put you with this guy or put you with that guy, and you know, we had this really unique network over, you know, a period of 12 years.
What are some good examples that illustrate the connections you were able to make like that? Were they asking specifically for people in your network, or was it you just realizing, oh, you know who you need? I got the perfect person for you to do this.
It's just it just happens randomly most of the time, you know. And you know, I don't want to violate any, you know, confidence between any of the companies, but it just is random. It's random.
Is the Uber there? I feel like there's one between Uber and Rock Nation. Is that one you can talk about or not talk about?
Yeah, that that relationship, Shervin Pishavar, who introduced me to Travis, Shervin and I were talking, and I ended up introducing him to Jay-Z and the Rock Nation guys,
Right.
and those guys ended up becoming investors. Actually, they've done a ton of deals together since then.
Okay, but that traces back to your making that connection.
Exactly,
Realizing-
and it's reciprocated because the Rock Nation guys then turn around and they put me in some really good deals as well.
Right.
So so we share a lot of deal flow.
How did Atom Factory really evolve into what you described as like an operating system or a platform? It seems so far afield from what we think of as a conventional artist management firm.
It's not an artist, man. For me, the company's kind of built around, I just want to work on, and I can say this is not being broadcast, I just want to do cool shit. And that's it.
We may put it online, so we'll just
I want to do
deal with that,
I want to do
right?
really interesting things if you put that. But
Take two.
Yeah. No, but I just want to work on really cool things, work with really cool people, and I think the entrepreneurs that we work with are really cool and really interesting. The artists that we work with, some of the projects that we work on. So it's one of those things where I didn't want to get pigeonholed as and especially coming from hip hop music, it was the stereotype of okay, you're a young black guy, you come from hip hop. You can't manage pop stars, and kind of, and even from the very beginning, I could kind of see that, it was one of those things where it was a big question mark whether we were going to be able to, manage pop stars or whether we were going to be able to manage people in rock music, and even
because they thought each genre was going to be so different.
yeah,
in terms
and
of what's
and it's
required
just
and
about people at the end.
Yeah.
What we're humans at the end of the day, and especially with this younger generation of artists, they don't care about color,
Right.
they don't care, and even in tech, I think it was coming from music, stereotypes there. So I'm just looking, how can we break down these boxes, and and so I wake up every day just figuring out, how can we break boxes.
Right. I'm interested in the music industry is in flux right now. So much is changing, just the old model shifting so much. What does that mean for you in terms of managing the career of someone like John Legend, really established, successful artist, and then a newer artist like Meghan Trainor? So take us through kind of each one of those and talk about how they really, your role is different with each one.
Yeah, for me, in our company, I kind of serve as an elderly statesman a lot of times.
Elderly at 41. Okay.
Trust me, I'm elderly in our company, and but I serve as almost like an elderly statesman, and I work with some fantastic managers in the company. Ty Staglorious, who
Sure.
know is a partner at the company.
She's worked with John Legend for years.
Yeah, Ty went to school with John, and Ty and John came in a couple of years ago. And and the whole thing with John Legend is that here you have an artist who's been around for 10 years, who, Boston Consulting Group, John
Yeah.
worked at BCG,
Is he the only, I've talked to him years ago for a story in the magazine. I remember thinking, is he the only artist who started as a consultant?
Oh yeah, no.
I mean, that's crazy.
100%. By the way, you really got to prepare for any artist that can show up with spreadsheets
Well, you were telling me before, we were talking about John before he came out. All right, when you got in John's car, it was unlike any other artist's car. What did you
telling
see?
Chuck, John was at my office for a meeting, and I had to get into his car to drive somewhere. And I get in the car, and it's NPR's on the radio. There's a copy of The Economist on the passenger seat, and I'm like, this is the only artist whose car I'm ever gonna get into and experience this or whatever. And usually, it's blunts in the ashtray of half the cars I had to get into. John's a lot different. But with John, here you are with an artist that 10-year career, and the strategy was just about reinvention and repositioning, and being able to appeal to new audiences, and and John's super smart, and our team sat down and we just strategized around it. And by the way, it doesn't hurt that he wrote the biggest record of his career with all of me.
Right.
And and our thing is, if you give us a hit record, we know what to do with it. By the way, we're really good with a hit record, right? Like anybody's good with a hit record.
Yeah.
So it's just putting some strategy around it. And then with Meghan Trainor, on the other hand, is a brand new artist that, 4 or 5 months ago, nobody ever heard of before. And then all of a sudden, by the way, I've never, in my career, I've never seen an artist move this fast. I think her song this week will be the 4th week at #1 in the United States. It's #1 in the UK, Australia, and all of these countries around the world within 4 months.
Right.
So I've never.
How long did it used to take for that sort of success to happen?
Well, 10 years ago, it would have taken 2 years for it to happen.
Wow.
About 6 years ago, it would have taken about a year for it to happen. And now, it's happening within, 60 days.
Right. Is that the Moore's Law of music happening?
No,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's happening quicker and quicker. You're building global superstars. Actually, Scooter Braun and I,
You'll see Scooter Braun later today at one of the sessions.
I'm Scooter's opening act today. But Scooter and I flew in this morning together, and I was just complimenting him on the success of Ariana Grande. And, within 2 years, he's built Ariana into selling out arenas, #1 in Japan, #1 in the UK, all of these territories.
Mm-hmm.
But literally, to sell out arenas all around the world, that used to take a decade to happen. And
right.
now it's, that's happening in 2 years.
So what are the pain points that accelerated success creates for you?
Keeping up.
Yeah.
It's moving so fast that we have one act on the company, this act Nico and Benz out of their a Norwegian duo, #1 top 40 record within weeks or whatever, and the records become so big at radio, but still people don't know what these guys look like. So so now we have to spend the next 6 months playing catch up or whatever,
yeah.
and introducing the world to the band in a way. We used to have time to do it, and now it's it's just moving so quick. We as a company, we just have to keep up and just and stay ahead of it. But it's tough.
Yeah, that compressed process of just like discovering an artist and then having that insatiable appetite, and then all of a sudden you're in the position of like, how do I feed the beast with more music?
And you have to feed the beast, because what happens is, it used to be about, you like one song and then, you got a few months, that song will play on the radio. No way. If people hear one song they like, they want to hear the next song. They want to go to your Wikipedia page. They want to find out about you. They want to hear the other 4 songs. Like with Meghan, we had to rush and put out the EP with 4 other songs on, 3 other songs on it, just so people see, this isn't a one-hit wonder. She has, it's a deep catalog, and now we got to rush to put out the album because fans want more and more, and you got to be able to keep up with it.
Mm-hmm. And are you working with these artists to try to get them to diversify, to kind of follow your same model of, you need to have more than just one thing? Like I look at John Legend, his production company is doing really well.
Yeah.
They're getting a bunch of deals, I think, through HBO.
Yeah.
He seems to be moving kind of beyond music into some different areas. Are you steering that, encouraging that? What is your role?
It depends on where they're at with their career. Just because John's career is really established, and I think he has the infrastructure and the bandwidth to be able to go out and start a television production company
mm-hmm.
and everything else. I think with new artists, their diversification that I look for is, are you a songwriter? Do you have a touring career? Can we build a merchandise business? Can we build an endorsement business? So their diversification is a lot different, and I'm not telling artists, you need to start, an investment portfolio or anything like that. I think the diversification is more, you should, and are there additional revenue streams mm-hmm. within your career outside of just you, making records?
Right. We're going to take questions in just a minute, so think about what you might want to ask Troy, but I'm going to circle back to this convergence of tech and music, and we were talking a few minutes before he came on about this deal with U2 and Apple. And I'm curious, your take on that in terms of what technology, what the tech industry gets that maybe the music industry doesn't, I thought was really interesting.
No, I think the difference is, the difference on the tech industry really understands what massive scale means. You know, when you have 1 billion users on a platform, or 500 million users on a platform, or even 100 million users on a platform, if you were to put a paywall in front of Facebook or Twitter or WhatsApp or Instagram, they wouldn't have been able to get the scale that they've been able to get.
Right.
Then, you can go and monetize the platform and everything else.
It's like you built in that habit through all that scale.
Yeah, and the music industry puts a paywall in front of that scale, and I think it limits the amount of people who are actually going to purchase music or interact with music, on a regular basis. And specifically about the U2 Apple deal, me personally, I thought it was very brave, and I thought it was great. For me, if I could get any music on 500 in front of 500 million people within 1 second, it's fantastic. And I just thought it was ironic that more people complained about Apple putting U2 in their iTunes account than they did when Apple gave away their information to the NSA.
Yeah. Right.
So I just think the music industry has to be comfortable with experimenting. I think companies have to. I just think we have to be open to breaking down that paywall.
Mm-hmm. We were talking before about software updates and how I thought you had a good way of putting it, like that a software update these days that's bigger than what like an album launch or something.
Yeah, no,
it's like these unifying cultural
software
experience.
updates have become cultural experiences.
Yeah.
It used to be an album was a cultural experience when you knew that that album that you and all of your friends loved, was coming out, and everybody would talk about it and wait for it and talk about the songs on the album. And now, when iOS 8 comes out,
Did you get it?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. I want to turn to you guys and see if you have some questions for Troy. Yeah, we have Mike's position, I think, in the aisles right here. If you could just.
My name is Cyrus Adami. I have a question because I see technology, humanity. One of the big problems right now we see in America is a race. You see
what? I'm sorry.
Races.
Yeah.
You see it in White House, and you see it in Ferguson, everywhere. In terms of, it means you are someone that you are very famous. How you see in the next 5 years? This is a big problem we have in America between black and white, and how discrimination increases every day.
Well, I don't think, when we look at it, this is a problem that we've dealt with since Africans were imported from Africa, right? So, this isn't new to our country, and it's not a problem that's going to be solved within 5 years, and by the way, in 40 years, our country is going to look a lot different than it does now. And I think, just me personally, I only can look at, what my personal impact can be. And how can I break down stereotypes of young black men in this country? How can I provide opportunities for young black men in this country? When Mark Cuban and guys like that can say, if a black guy is running in a hoodie, down the street, I'm crossing the street, how, and by the way, and he sits next to a black guy on his show every single day, and owns a basketball team that's full of, of young black guys. I'm glad Mark was able to speak out about it, but my job is to try to, how can I break down those stereotypes? So my answer is not, I know for a fact it's not gonna, we have a black president, and it seems like it's gotten worse, so I don't think we're gonna solve that within the next 5 years. But hopefully, as generations die off, and as stereotypes break down, we get to a place in our country where where police officers don't feel like it's open season on a young black guy just because they're fearful. You know, I have a 20-year-old son, a 19-year-old son. I don't dress like this all the time. Sometimes I have on a black hoodie, and I want to be able to drive down any neighborhood and feel safe.
Yeah. Next question. Yeah, over here on the left. Yeah.
This may be a little unfair question because we've probably had this conversation before, but
That's Dennis Ashley, big-time agent at ICM.
This is about you right now. As a manager in the tech world, how do you see technology changing touring or working with touring, music touring?
Well, I think it's going to be, you know, I talk about data-driven solutions a lot of times. So I think from our perspective, you know, I sat down with Pandora last week, and Pandora gave me access to a lot of data just around what was happening with some of our specific artists. And I learned a lot from those guys, just in terms of markets that I didn't anticipate being hot markets for our clients. All of a sudden you see that, wow, we should be looking at, you know, at this market or whatever. So I think a lot of barriers, I think a lot of information is going to be available for artists to know the places that they need to go, the songs they need to be performing in certain places. You know, Dennis and I, you know, have talked about, you know, some platforms that we've seen that's going to even, you know, unfortunately for Dennis, maybe put the agencies, you know, out of business one day, where it's going to allow, you know, 14-year-old kids at home to be able to book shows and have access to artists, you know, that they wouldn't have never been able to have access to, and just build this direct relationship between artists and, you know, and a community of buyers, versus it being, you know, the old guys in the suits, you know, that they used to have to go through before.
Right. It's like, okay, is there the 14-year-old who can come up with the algorithm to actually identify these untapped markets that you guys should be touring in?
Yeah, exactly, and it exists now. We're looking at it.
Right, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Great, well, Troy, thanks so much for sitting down with us. Really appreciate it. And thanks for your questions. Really appreciate it.
Great, thank you.